Alright. That was weird. Hey, hi, hello. Good evening. It's like 10:59 p.m. on February 28th, 2021. we vibing. Oh, yeah, let's go dig a tunnel. Let's go dig a tunnel to get lots of cobblestone I won't keep. It's a weird night. It's not a bad night. My sleep schedule's all fucked up right now. It was a month or two ago. It's hard to tell. Time really just exists very distantly these days. A couple of months ago, my upstairs neighbor, have no idea who the fuck they are, got themselves a pretty new speaker system, and I can tell they don't have great taste because they like really fucking love the bass. The music they play is not bad actually. A lot of it's like cringy 90s nostalgia, so I actually think I'm living underneath a fellow millennial who just you know, is a little trapped in the past sometimes. Anyway, I don't mind it most of the time, but they were having a rare one yesterday. Friday, they started blasting shit at like, I don't know, 7, 8 p.m. Which is a little early if you're throwing a party. But like, alright, whatever. I had headphones on, so I didn't really care. And they kept going till like 6 in the fucking morning. I'm not gonna like roll up on my neighbor and be like, hey, turn the bass down. Cause like, dog, I've been the asshole neighbor throwing loud parties plenty of times. Like, I don't really care that much. It's more just like, how's nobody else losing their shit here? But yeah, my sleep schedule's all fricked up because I was trying to go to sleep, but then just like laying down in bed and being like, oh, no way in hell am I able to sleep right now. Not like I have work to go to or anything. So I wasn't letting myself be angry. I kept feeling irritated. I'm like, no, dog, this is not worth getting angry about. There's just people trying to enjoy themselves, probably trying to flex for people they have over. It sounded like, you know, a young people party, which, you know, they shouldn't be partying with the whole pandemic going on right now, but I don't have the anger in my heart right now to care that much about it. Just like, well, they shouldn't be, but, you know, I have friends who shouldn't be going out and partying and going out to eat and going to bars, but they keep fucking doing it. And, you know, if a year of people dying and being constantly told they shouldn't be doing it isn't gonna dissuade them, maybe there's no fucking hope for these people, and it's best to just, like, let them do whatever the fuck they're gonna do, because if the government isn't gonna step in and do anything, it's not like individually I have any power to affect people's lives and outlooks, and like, maybe they're just, like, real depressed and they really need some connection with fellow human beings. Like, shit, I know I could really use that kind of release, so, you know, I'm not gonna, number one, put on clothes, go upstairs to knock on the door of somebody I've never met before and be like, yo, dog, turn the fucking bass down. Not even, like, turn the music down, just the bass. Just the bass. Because I'm pretty sure I live in a masonry building, let's say. And sound travels pretty well through the stuff that my building is made out of. So the complaint isn't really like it's too loud, it's just the vibrations are carrying through the floor. It sounds like they don't have it elevated. It's weird listening to somebody else's acoustics and being like, I'm pretty sure I know the layout of the room. Like, you have this in a corner, not at the window, but pretty near the window. It's sitting on the floor, or it's sitting on like a entertainment system that is full contact with the floor, because the air is not absorbing anything here. What I'm feeling is in the in the floor right now. And it's not particularly well set up. It's just all coming from like one source in their apartment, so they don't even have speakers very low, like spread out. And again, I'm really trying to not... Why was there just a little... Is this an abandoned mine tunnel spawn? I think so. When I was younger, did the exact same thing. So I'm not gonna front and act like I've never been a noise nuisance to my neighbors. Oh, I definitely have. Not, you know, in recent years, but I'm not too old to remember the absolute insanity we put our neighbors through in college, so it's just really funny. Like, I threw a pool party once. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with no pool. I bought a shitty inflatable pool, spent hours inflating it in our living room, and it was a terrible idea. It was a terrible idea. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I had people for years. It was not impressive, alright? It was silly and stupid, and that was kind of the point. For years afterward, I'd have people, and my roommate did too, we'd have people be like, oh, is this the place where you threw the pool party? Or like, hey, are you the guys who threw the fucking pool party? Like, yes? Yes? So again, I don't have a leg to stand on in being like, you should be quiet all the time and not bother your neighbors ever. It's not it, dog, but like, get rugs to place over your carpets to help insulate the sound a little bit. If you're gonna consistently play loud music, do like the bare minimum like I do and have some cheap ass soundproofing. It doesn't have to be good stuff. Seriously, it doesn't. Even the like, oh god, how many of these? These are not expensive and are available online. They can dampen a lot of noise. The point is never sound elimination. You have to spend ungodly amounts of money and create like either a vacuum or airlocks in order to create actual soundproofing. It's about sound mitigation. And it's not just for like your neighbor's benefit or whoever else might be around. It's also for your benefit. For just like, okay, you know what? If you're having sex, do you really want the knowledge that your neighbors can hear everything going on? Not for me, dude. That ain't for me. Maybe for some people, in which case, you know, make sure your neighbors consent and are into it, and you're not just getting off on people not being able to escape your sex, which is it's a weird look. I don't get it. I like privacy too much, I think. Whenever I think about the noise even I make in my apartment, I'm like, I should do some more soundproofing. So, if anything, yesterday night and this morning got me thinking about what kind of soundproofing you can do to a ceiling. It's a lot easier to soundproof a floor than it is a ceiling. Like a floor, you can buy rugs, you can put in big furniture like full bookshelves or beds, or, you know, even like fucking beanbags or couches, things like that, things with a lot of mass, or things with a lot of surface area, preferably both, will absorb a decent amount of noise. But again, elevating it off of the floor is huge if you have people underneath you too, because otherwise a lot of it's going to be lost going straight down. It's about creating as many varieties in texture and in material as possible. Now, naturally, some material insulate a lot better than others, but the translating from one medium to another diffuses noise a little bit. The air gaps are, like, insanely good for diffusing noise. Like, for example, I have some blackout curtains near my bed that I used when I worked night shift to actually be able to fucking sleep. Because even though I have blackout curtains on my windows, some days it just wasn't enough. Some days in the middle of summer when the sun's just right, etc., etc., etc. This is my fortune pickaxe again. But I closed those blackout curtains last night because I'm like, it can't hurt. It actually helped out like a shit ton. Because it created just another space that it had to permeate and another transition that it had to permeate. I'm not even like, I'm not a sound engineer. I'm not a musician, but these are just like basic like 101 rules to sound mitigation. Like, what I want to do is like, hey champ, so it sounds like you spent like, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred on a new sound system, and it seems like you're enjoying it. Congratulations. Now we gotta talk about like noise ownership. Like, hey, don't know if you're aware, but you have a lot of neighbors. And if you want to play loud music, dude, I do too. Let's talk about how you can do that without disturbing the people around you. Not like, hey, shut up, I'm trying to sleep in here. Or the youth is so disrespectful. Like, that ain't what I'm getting at. But again, I don't fucking know these people. And there's already enough that would hold me back from doing that if it weren't for the fact that, like, again, ye old pandemic do be going on, though. And I'd have to throw on a fucking mask in addition to, like, putting on clothes and going over there. It's just like, fuck no. This isn't worth the effort. I'm not gonna tattletale on them and go to El Building Managerio and be like, hey, they're being loud, make them stop, because probably the means by which they would try to accomplish that would be punitive, and I'm not interested in doing that. And having worked in as a concierge, I know that really the party line for a lot of property owning companies is that they will contact the person by email or calling them and be like, hey, so we got a complaint, maybe stop. But then beyond that, what they're going to tell you is call the police and make a report. Because it's terrifying to me how many institutionalized ways of engaging with other human beings in any kind of anything needing conflict resolution, the knee-jerk corporate solution, or really knee-jerk American solution, what's the difference, is just call the police. Oh, they're being loud? Better call the Gestapo on them. Better get the armed police who kill people in crisis and shoot on a hair trigger. Yeah, better call them to help resolve this. Like, what the fuck? No. No! Like, it's one thing if it's, like, they're being a nuisance, but you know, it's probably way better just to start with having a fucking conversation. And then if they're belligerent or, I don't know, uncooperative in some way, you can look at other measures. Again, don't call the fucking police. You could threaten. legal action. If you really wanted to, you could, oh, I don't know, get a speaker system of your own and blast bass when you know that they're sleeping or trying to do something as a, whole tete-a-tete type dealio. You could rig up a electromagnet underneath where you are pretty sure that their speaker is, or over where the speaker is, depending on the circumstances, and move your electronics and valuables to a safe distance and fire off that bad boy and fry their very expensive piece of electronics that are keeping you awake. There are other ways to do this that don't result in a person getting hurt and don't necessitate calling the, the occupying militant force we have here in this country. I don't know. I am more quick to jump to, I want to throw a brick through your window, than I am to want to call the cops on you. Does that make me a good neighbor? I don't know. I think it makes me a better neighbor than somebody who would just call the police on you. But that's just me. Of course I feel that way, right? Obviously don't start with brick. You start with having a conversation with the person, or knocking on their door, writing a letter, or, engaging in dialogue in some way. And then, maybe we're in brick territory. If it continues. Like I had a neighbor when I lived with Cora. Just had very loud sex at very weird times of the day. Not like consistently weird, just all over the time. All over the fucking place. And their bedroom was right above ours, so we had a really hard time sleeping. And, we talked to him a few times, hey, we can hear you. It's really disruptive. Can you try to keep it down? And they would just be, haha, oh, oops. And no, it's not a oops, sorry. It's a yes, I will fix this. Just don't you ha oops me. One time, Cora was working a job that she had to be awake and out of the house at 5 in the morning. And they just kept consistently having obnoxiously loud sex. And Cora was about to lose her mind. She went up there, and the excuse our neighbor got was, oh, it's a special occasion. Bitch, I don't give a damn what occasion it is. Shut the fuck up. Buy a gag. There are ways around this. I've had some amazing sex in my life that did not necessitate screaming. And okay, there have been studies done that show... I don't want to dig into this, do I? I mean, not really. I recall reading studies. Let's phrase it this way. I recall reading studies that show that louder vocalizations in sex were theorized to be a response or a behavior, and God, this has been years since I read this, a behavior meant to attract other mates in addition to the one that you are having sex with, is like a group call to arousal. No, this was just some anthropology, sociology paper. I don't really think this was a study or based in any kind of fact, but I remember reading this paper, and it kind of, there's some layers to it, man. There are definitely some layers to this. Author, is there something you want to talk about here? like the notion that the paper seemed to be trying to get at was like people are just loud because they want people to hear them having sex, and they're just like big old sluts about it and want to have more sex. And they contrasted like the way that humans have sex, the way that people from different cultures have sex, and like the associated vocalizations with bonobos, with chimpanzees, with other marsupials, not the right word here, Alex. Primates. Dumbass. And like, it's a really interesting premise, but it is, it's definitely been like a decade or more since I read it, and now that I think about it, I'm like, there seems to be like some biological prescription assumptions going into that. There seem to be like, as I seem to recall, the language used in it seemed a little misogynistic. But of course, it's been a long time. Anyway, it's very easy to not be loud. It's very easy to be considerate of your neighbors, or to work with your neighbors or community with noise. There are very few biological imperatives that require you make a lot of noise. Oh boy, this is gonna be a problem. There we go. Like, dude, if you want to listen to loud music or have ridiculously loud sex, like, cool, find a way to do it that's respectful of the people around you. I'm not saying you shouldn't get down however you want to get down, or have fun, or relax however you want to do it. Just be considerate that you're not the only person in the world, that your actions impact other people. I think we rely way too much on punishment as incentivization to motivate or demotivate certain behaviors. Like, the whole idea of, well, how do you resolve this problem with somebody else? In my mind, you resolve it most effectively by sharing that there's pain or discomfort or displeasure caused by somebody else's actions, and exploring together how to mitigate that pain or discomfort. Okay, you know, seems pretty reasonable. But the expectation is first you appeal to an authority that holds some sort of power over this person, i.e. the building owner or building manager, in order to coerce them into a mode of behavior that is more in line with your expectations. Okay, that's pretty problematic. And then, failing that, you escalate to appealing to a authority which can invite violence against them, i.e. by calling the police. That seems really fucking extreme, right? Well, yeah, they want to be quiet, so I just had to call the armed thugs who aren't accountable for killing people. What was I gonna do? Right? Like... oh. Yeah. Man. Or we could just not place a break there. That's fine. So yeah, my sleep schedule's a little effed, but like, easy come, easy go. It's not like I'm going, ah! It's not like I'm going out or I have obligations. Not for like a week or so. A week or so from now, I have a friend coming to Seattle to check out properties. Well, properties. To look for apartments, I should say. I don't run in circles that are that rich. They're moving to Seattle and need to find apartments, so they and their partner are coming here and looking for apartments. And they've invited me to hang out, or asked if I wanted to hang out, and we've been trying to brainstorm some responsible ways to do that. I got nothing, to be honest with you. I think, like, you know, the aquarium's open and the zoo is open, and the way it works is that you go basically in a line that's socially distanced. I'm like, that doesn't sound terrible, but also, like, it's fucking cold right now, and I don't really want to go to the zoo. Like, it's such a shame living in a great city like this and having people who you care about and miss come to visit or talk about visiting and being like, oh, I want to share all this cool shit with you. But all the cool shit's closed, or it's open, and it's during a fucking pandemic, and it feels very weird going like, oh yeah, let's go do cool shit. Like, you know, maybe let's not do cool shit. Let's not, you know. They suggested, like, oh, we can just, like, hang out at your place. I'm like, fuck, I need to clean. Like, there's a year. That's not true. There's, like, 3 months of depression cleaning backlog I gotta do right now, and that's no bueno. Yeah, but talking about them, about restaurants I miss, places I miss going, stuff that they'll enjoy about the city, made me, like, very sad and like, holy shit, I wish I could just, like, go out and do fun things and meet people. And, like, here's a small example. I never went to any of the DSA chapter meetings here in Seattle, because they're normally in, like, Wallingford-ish, which is it's further than I want to go. Alright, I don't want to hop on a bus and go, like, half an hour to attend a meeting with people I've never met before. 20 minutes, 15 minutes, yeah, alright, sure. But, you know, there's not a lot of people who actually live in the city center like I do. Well, that's probably not true. But all the same, I hadn't been doing it last year. Well, prior to last year, I guess I should say, because I was working graveyard, and, like, the times were like, yeah, let's go meet up at a bar or whatever, like, in hours that were effectively like 5 in the morning for me. Like, you know, I'm just gonna follow this community, like, donate and support to it, but, like, with my current lifestyle and work obligations, I can't dedicate time to this. Now I actually could! But also, I don't want to go out and congregate with people because, the virus. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for people who have been constantly agitating and protesting and demonstrating and taking direct action and, like, doing community action in, like, very direct mutual aid over the course of this pandemic. But part of me, at the same time, is uncomfortable at the idea. Because, God, I don't know, just big groups of people are scary. Normally, they're kind of, like, low-key scary because a herd of people, just like a herd of any other animal, can get spooked very easily or riled up pretty easily and can do some pretty crazy shit. Panics and... oh god, what's the word I want? Stampedes have a very well documented history of being dangerous. But particularly when there's a dangerous respiratory disease spread by aerosolized particles. Oh, people are the last thing I want to be around in circumstances like these. Oh, I have an arrow? My god. Yeah, I can see that it's pretty dark down there. That's legit. Let's try to meaningfully address this. I got one corner here. 1, 2, plop, 1, 2, plop, 1, 2, plop. 2, plop, 1, 2, plop, 1, 2, plop. It's a little less dark. Yeah, that's kind of pretty. It loses the hazy effect. If I zoom in, it's still kind of pretty. Yeah, anyway, just kind of nostalgic for, summer, Seattle summer, prior to the modern day, I guess. For so much of the last year, a pretty common talking point has been this notion of getting back to normal. And I've been none too shy about being emphatically on the record with the assertion that I don't think there is a going back. I think there's a normalization, a creation of a new norm, an adjustment to the new norm. But I don't think there's going back to the way things were before. I don't think you have a pandemic is deeply traumatizing and terrifying as this, and just move on. And just go back to how things were before and live with it. Now, I'm not an expert, right? But I don't know what the other side of this looks like. I really don't. Right now, it mostly looks like more of the same. Burp. Pardon me. And like a stubborn refusal to accept just how far we've come, how many people have died, and how much so many people have lost. And that's very difficult to accept. It's very difficult to look at and be okay with. Like, manufacturing consent for capitalism, for the status quo, for so much of normalized society was difficult enough prior to 500,000 so far dead. It was difficult enough prior to this. But seeing the efforts, the painstaking efforts to try to normalize going back to work, to try and normalize reopening schools before the pandemic has passed, even, is just enraging all of these efforts to get the workforce into more productive footing, more consumption-based footing, to get the economy back. It's just absurd and like insulting. I don't want to go back to what we had before. We need something new. But I don't think we're gonna get something new, not with our current leadership here in the United States anyway, not with our current leadership. I think the party line will be trying to go back to normal. And normal's unacceptable. Normal has killed so many people. Normal, by neglect and malice, has ended lives, has kept people trapped in poverty, has allowed the separation of classes to accelerate in terms of capital accumulation, if nothing else, for so long. Like, the conditions that we suffer under will not be improved by going back to normal. They'll only be continued to allow to fester. Thank God. I was having a conversation with my mother about quite a few things, but particularly she had brought up the rise in healthcare premiums. On average, year over year, healthcare premiums just keep going up in the United States. And she was sharing this study with me, saying like, hey, I think you'll find this interesting, and I did. And my immediate retort to it was like, I mean, yeah, it's interesting, but also what this study, which is well-intentioned and attempting to be progressive, is leaving out of its analysis is the way that increasingly premiums aren't just going up, but your deductible is also going up. So people are paying more in a monthly and annual basis just to maintain a policy that increasingly covers less and less and requires them to cover for themselves more and more. And she brought up this notion. It's a talking point we bounce back to fairly often. This occurrence, this cultural norm in the United States that so much responsibility for survival and welfare of the individual is placed on the individual. That there is absolutely no or very little, if any, responsibility when it comes to corporations or for-profit entities. But when it comes to individuals, individuals are ultimately responsible for an absurd amount in this country. And I don't know, somehow we got into talking about debt and like manufactured debt. And this notion that debt is a profitable industry to engage with. That a company makes more money and makes money more consistently if people are in debt to that company, rather than people just buying products straight up. And I mean, if you really want to see this full frontal, if you will, see this at its face, you know, look no further than the banking industry or the insurance industries here in the United States. And I suppose abroad, but when I say here in the United States, what I'm not trying to do is characterize the United States as being uniquely bad. though it is in many capacities. What I'm trying to do is frame what I'm talking about and my personal experience within a shared context. So that, like, yes, I'm aware that I'm just speaking about my country and my relationship and my experience with it. Because we Americans have a nasty tendency to project. To assign and ascribe our problems and values and experiences as universal ones. God, there was a great example of a video I shared the last week, sure. That it's a young man talking about, it's on YouTube, looking at the number of United States overseas military emplacements. And he was talking about how normalized it was for him. When he was living in the Netherlands, just having Little America that he could come back to on this fucking military base. And I won't lie, the guy seemed sheltered and liberal, like he has quite a bit to learn. But, you know, he's asking questions and he's collecting data. And, you know, even if he doesn't dig any deeper, well, at least he's looking, right? But this notion that he had was so weird and foreign to me, and classically American notion to have, is that, like, all countries just have overseas bases, right? No, dude, no, not all countries. Like, empires do. We do because we are an empire. I had some pretty bad professors when it comes to history. At Prescott College, I had a history teacher who did not understand what dialectical materialism was or what it meant, and how it could apply to the historical materialist model. And I tried explaining it to him. God, so many fucking times. And he's like, I just don't get it. Like, what do you mean you don't get it? It's the analysis of history as a result of changes in the ownership and control and literal means of production. Like, how has the means of production changed? Who affected that change? How was it affected? What did it impact? When I'm saying affected, I mean affected. A-F-F-E-C-T, not E-F-F-E-C-T. I mean both, but specifically I meant affect here. And he also argued the United States isn't an empire. I have students all the time in here who talk about the United States being an empire, practicing imperialism, but we're not an empire. Because I don't know, his definition of empires was so rigid. And this was very intentional, rigidly constructed, so as to include neocolonialism, so as to not include American overseas exploitive imperialist practices. We literally have military forces who project our will across international borders. Yes, we do not build a single national regime, but neither did Rome. Rome did in large part, but Rome also had puppet states and vassals and tributaries. The empires have done that for a long time. Why are we somehow different? Because we do that. And in Elmira College, God bless him. Let me open up with that. I really love this guy. But, I had a teacher who tried to define, a professor, I don't want to sell him short, who tried to define totalitarianism so narrowly and so specifically that it could refer to the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, but nowhere else. Like, okay, they're populist, they have a cult of personality, right? And have like an absolutist kind of power structure. Alright, yeah. Like, I don't know, man. Anytime a self-respecting historian in good faith says anything akin to, oh, the Soviets and the Nazis were the same. No, they fucking weren't. They both had similarities, right? In the same way that any governments have similarities. In the same way that we have frightening similarities to the Nazi regime of Germany in the 30s and 40s. And I think the similarities that the United States and other capitalist countries share are a lot more glaringly obvious than the cherry-picked similarities between ostensibly communist country. I say ostensibly because, dude, suck my dick. I don't think the Soviet Union was good. Alright, I really don't. And I get there's a lot tied up in that because I was raised American, and the visions of the Soviet Union that have been painted for me have been all intentionally unflattering or whatever, but that doesn't mean they're false. I don't like the Soviet Union. Neither do I like the United States. If given a choice, which would I pick? That, come on, man. What do you think? What do you think I'd pick? But I don't have a choice. And even at the time, nobody really had a choice in where they lived and what system they were born into. It's not really a productive conversation to be having. God, yeah. I really had a lot of respect for the specific expertise of Robert Shepard of Elmira College. He's a great guy. But I definitely butted heads with him a little bit. In a history class talking about the Middle Ages, he was asking his class, of which I was a part, I wasn't just some rando showing up to be like, well, actually, saying like, okay, say I have a time machine and you can go back in time to the Middle Ages, would you do it? And the purpose of this was, in his mind, to demonstrate, or to talk about, as facilitated by this conversation, to talk about, hey, y'all motherfuckers haven't considered that disease was a very real thing back then, and that would put you in a lot of risk. But he was asking us, seemingly he was asking us to be creative and come up with reasons why we might not want to go back in time. I'm like, I don't speak French. And English people didn't actually speak English. Like, I cannot read Old English. Like, Middle English, I cannot read. And don't give me that it's still English bullshit. It's not. But he gave me the, you'd figure it out, it's still English nonsense. I'm like, I'm shutting up because I'm your student and I respect you. And I don't want to start an argument here because, like, why would I? But also, like, no. it would be a big problem. Yeah, just little things like that. I don't know, like, I love parts of academia. I love people who have this kind of hungry curiosity about the world. I love the best parts of academia, right? I love the parts that are about asking questions and learning, but so much of it gets wrapped up in, academic dick waving. In who can reference the more specific or most esoteric writers or philosophers or specific historical instances that back you up in this very niche specific argument or conversation that you're having. And it's not tied uniquely to historian and anthropology academics. God, far from it. Some of the worst for this, in my experience, were social justice majors. Holy fuck, they hurt to talk to. Because a big part of academia is this exposure to new ideas and researching these new ideas and concepts and worldviews and changing your own because you're being exposed to new ideas, right? That's not a radical thing. That's a very normal, rational, human thing to do. Unfortunately, empathy and how to teach other people, or the importance of teaching other people, is not emphasized at all, really. So often people can come away with very nuanced, educated, elegant, sharpened definitions and understanding of things. Hey buddy, yeah, I know I looked in your general direction, but yeah, just fuck off. But they don't really know how to share that with people, nor is that really their priority. A lot of what academia teaches people, and I'm not saying this is somebody who's an outsider to academia, I'm saying this as a long-time excited participant within it. Academia is about making yourself feel superior and other people feel stupid for not getting in line with your superiority. Now, Alex, you may say, that's not real academia, and you're correct. That's capitalist academia. That's not academia based on, hey, comrade, I want to share this knowledge or information with you. That's academia based off of knowledge is power and keeping that power exclusive to only certified individuals maintains that power. Can I interact with this? Do I need a bucket to... I need a bucket to interact with this. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, it's super interesting to look at the elitism, let's say, inherent in a lot of academia. And the elitism doesn't come from the accumulation of knowledge, right? That would be a ridiculous assertion if I were making it. And I do not believe it, so I'm not ascertaining that. I'm not asserting that. What I am asserting is that education has historically been something afforded primarily or specifically to the privileged, to the elite, to the wealthy. Exclusively so, and this has been very intentional in order to provide advantages to those with privilege of exposure to this thing, right? Education has historically been valuable because the information, insights, and expertise shared is valuable. And in a lot of hierarchical societies, let's say, like, I don't know, our own here in the United States, there's been incentives to limit who has access to these clubs, who has access to this information, this knowledge, this expertise. Because if everyone knows something, is it valuable? I'd say sure, yeah, knowledge is inherently valuable in its own based on, like, what practically it can be used for. But classical academic exclusivity, I guess, asserts more that knowledge is only really valuable if it's exclusive. Do these have 2 gaps? Okay, these are 2 gap wide. That knowledge is power, and dangerous at that. Do you have a 2 wide gap from the outside? No, 2 wide gap between the little islands, but one wide gap from the outside. This doesn't really matter, but and then I guess the next one would be like here, then why is it only 2 wide? Because these don't really line up, that's why. Yeah. Do I have one over here at all, or do I just tear the whole fucking thing out? I don't know, dog. I don't know. For a long time, I really struggled with, because I love academia, I love studying, I love knowledge, I love being around people who are excited about learning about the world and really care about it. But academia also has a lot of history in being exclusive to certain social groups, people of certain ethnicities, people of certain classes, people of certain genders, people of certain sexualities even. I mean, that's not even an old thing, that's a now times thing. It's very difficult having something that you want to be a part of and you want to like, and you like it like intellectually, but in practice it's problematic. Now we're pretty much at an hour, but I'm gonna go off on something else before I stop. This ties into something that my older sister brought up today. She's very smart. She has always performed academically much better than I. In retrospect, I think that's there's a lot of small pieces that feed into that. She's very intelligent. Very intelligent. Yeah, she posted about how... Am I out of glowy blocks? No, I'm not. She posted about how the more she learns about the history of the United States and the United States treatment, like the more you, wait a minute, I'm getting this backwards. I shared a post that was, my brain's all fucked, talking about the more you study history, like, it's not a pleasant experience. Like, if you like studying history, if it's all pleasant, if you're just enjoying it, then you're not really studying history, because studying history is full of, like, learning deeply disturbing and troubling facts and realizations about the world, and, like, etc., etc. And she commented on it. Yeah, I'm remembering this correctly now. Man, memory is so faulty. About how she had just finished reading about the... Oh, god damn it. Little Bighorn. massacre? Was it Little Bighorn? I swear it was something related to Custer. Now I'm looking because I'm like, well, fuck, I don't remember. And I don't want to... Wounded Knee. Ooh, even worse. Okay. Yeah, Wounded Knee. Okay, that makes sense. And... I had a very long response, like... Yeah, it's just fucking horrible to read about American history. Like the mod that people occasionally ask me if I'm still working on, or when it'll be done, or... Like, at this point, I just assume people are memeing when they ask, because to me it's a meme, but people are asking it in, like, seriousness. I need to remember that, but it's the same explanation I've given to that. I spent a good 2 years plus prior college... Oh, you are freaking out because I have seeds. Plus prior college research time for months and months and months studying the history of indigenous peoples in the United States and the interaction of the United States with the indigenous population here. It's horrible. It's horrible. And, like, the more you read about it, the worse it gets, which is so surprising when even at first blush, it's fucking horrible. At first blush, even if you just, like, look at a list of massacres in North America of indigenous people, it's a long list. It's a very long list. And it's a lot of fucking people if you total it up, or even look at specific incidents that are a lot of people. But the more you read about it, the worse it gets. Because you can read about massacres and then be like, oh, I wonder what happened to these people who did the murder. Or the bad thing. And I'm gonna stick with murder, but definitely there were worse instances of violence than that. They didn't just, like, get away with it. They were rewarded. They were appointed political offices. They were given jobs. They were made cornerstones of community. And when crimes actually were committed that were recognized even at the time as being crimes, perpetuators of violence or committers of violence were acquitted by their peers, saying, like, yeah, you know, technically the law says this is illegal, but I don't think so, so I'm gonna say it is illegal. Oh my god. Eat the seeds, chickens. Alright, you can't. You literally can't eat anymore. I'm like, okay, that's pretty bad, but, like, at least it's only that bad, right? No, it gets worse. Because if you start looking at the historical record for... Jesus Christ, that's a lot of eggs. If you start looking at the historical record for these incidents and start looking at massacres, I keep calling them incidents, and that's a bad fucking habit. They weren't incidents, Alex. That's a polite... It's making it too polite. The massacres and the atrocities, even better, committed. You start to recognize that the ones that are included in lists are just the well-documented ones. The ones that are included in news stories or memorials, or the ones in popular knowledge that you can easily learn about, those are just the ones that are perpetuated in the, you know, culturally. Imagine the number that were never recorded. It's a big number, because you look at the number of cases of violence in the modern day that never make it to even, like, a local news source. Like, stories from the Untamed West were a big deal when they came in, but often they were done to sell papers, not to educate people about the reality of the life in Western Americas. And like, holy fuck, there were so many incidents that don't even make it into Wikipedia articles, don't even make it into textbooks, don't even make, well, a lot doesn't make it into textbooks, don't even make it into like books on this thing. There's a lot of things that only exist as like references within historical material, and that's it. And then when you look at the historical material, all of the authors are white people. And how reliable they are? Not very reliable. They're very biased accounts. Like, shit, if we go back and look at the authors, we're often the people perpetuating this or committing these crimes. If you look at the language used, and I know I've talked about this before, used by especially the members of the United States Army who were occupying the western part of the now United States, the atrocities they committed, that they boasted about, were some of the most horrific examples of inhumane violence I've ever read. And I started getting into history by learning about World War II. Like, there's some deeply fucked up stuff in there. But no, we don't really think about that. And like, Christ, even that aside, then you start looking at states where like the slavery of indigenous peoples was legalized and normalized, and not just for like a short while, but for a long while. And just the criminalization of certain native practices and indigenous practices, or the tendency to charge indigenous people for crimes or have different standards based on race. Like, the more you look at the history of the United States, the worse it gets. And I don't really know where that road leads, ultimately. I don't have an answer for that. I really wish that I had, like, some kind of redemption twist to put on the end here, but I think that's really the problem. Well, not the problem, but a problem when teaching this stuff and talking about this stuff. American history, we have such a burning desire to put a twist on it and be like, but everything's okay now, but then we had the Civil Rights Movement, but then the Civil War ended, and the Emancipation Proclamation, but then this, but then this. We like to use these past incremental instances, these rare exceptional instances of momentary justice, or momentary steps towards justice, as being a bookmark, as being a bookend, as being, and it's okay because it's over now. But it's not really over. The stories never stopped, they changed. The violence changed. But the systemic things feeding into these patterns of behavior, these cultural and social norms feeding into this violence, the theft of land, the genocide of peoples, the enslavement of populations, has been adjusted and mitigated and reframed. But it hasn't gone away. And I think that's the worst part, right? About the more you read about it, the more apparent it is, the more glaringly obvious it is, the more enraging it is that other people around you aren't aware of it, or don't care about it, or don't believe it. And when the evidence is, it's there, it's well documented, it's enshrined. So I don't know. You know, I want to wrap this up with something, but it can't be, well, at least things are getting better. They're not. They are in some small ways, but not because of anything being given to us, just by what we can take for ourselves. Things will only get better if we organize, if we unionize, if we collaborate, with one another for a better, more humane future. So I think I'm gonna wrap up there. Thanks for hanging out. There's been some good reception with the Stellaris stuff. I may play more of it. I've really been more interested in modding and stress testing it lately. We'll see what happens. Either way, until later, I'm gonna say toodaloo. Take care. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.